In the words of Seth Godin, the only thing worse than starting something and failing is not starting something.
This is the Insurance Technology Podcast, where we bring interesting people from across the insurance ecosystem to discuss and debate technology's impact on the industry. Join us each episode for insights and best practices from industry stewards and tomorrow's innovators.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Insurance Technology Podcast. We're taking a break from new interviews to give you a little bit of the best of. In the words of Seth Godin, the only thing worse than starting something and failing is not starting something. Well, we've had lots of entrepreneurs and insurtech startup founders on the podcast, so we thought it would be a good idea to pull together some of the best moments from episodes past. So in this episode, we're going to hear Reid and his guests talk about the pros and cons of starting a business, the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, and the payoffs for persevering. Stay tuned.
Bull Penguin is in a lot of ways a outer layer for me, Ben, and some of the early executives. Like, it's a reflection of who we are. We're not afraid to say we don't do pilots. That's just silly. Dipping toe in the water. Are you kidding me? Like what is happening with the rest of the body when your toes in the water? What does that doesn't even make any sense to me. We were just like, look, do you want to be as successful or none? I don't really care about the million excuses you have that you're in year 20 of your guidewire installation or whatever the excuse was. You have the budget. You're a big enough company and you certainly want to grow. That's what companies do. So we definitely had that. Now, yeah, I could sit here and tell you how awesome and, how strong-willed we are. And it's all a happy, successful story in the end, which thank God it was. But in the moment, man, like I'm talking to you right now and I remember logging into our Huntington checking account, the bank that we use, looking at how much money is in there and just kind of like thinking in my head, how much longer, these are 6 to 18 month sales cycle after you figure out who the right person to work with. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I going to do for payroll? Oh man, like I don't want to take out more of my money. Do I loan it? Do I borrow it? Like, how do I even explain it to investors? Why would they throw bad money? There was just a lot of, oh my God, nights. So all those stories are true. Logging into your checking account and saying, man, I just don't have enough for payroll. What the hell are we going to do? Those stories about people like literally losing sleep. I would wake up at 1 a.m, and I know many others on our team felt the same way. And they're like continuing the meeting they had, at 1 o'clock during the day in their head, and they just can't go back to sleep. And we're back on Slack and we're talking to each other. It's hard work, but it is incredibly rewarding. Honestly, I'm getting the chills just by talking about it. It's like that rush of, being in the fog of war. So it is for a startup, oftentimes a dangerous move, a costly move. You have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of nerves. I tell people all the time, it's not for the faint of heart at all. You have to be able to keep a poker face the entire time, all the way through. Believe in yourself. Don't compromise. Be genuine. And if you're really building a solution and working hard with a group of people that are believers in the same thing, be patient enough and it'll come back around. And that's what we did and worked out. And thank goodness it does. It doesn't always work out that way.
So while Ilya talked about the hard work that goes into actually creating the business and trying to solve some of those problems that the industry has, our next guest, Will Shaw, talked about the side that we don't sometimes hear about, how it affects not just you, but your family and that work-life balance.
It dawned on me like a month or two ago, like the easy part is putting in the hours. Like everybody talks about, like, you got to be okay putting in 40, 50, 60 hours. Yeah, that happens sometimes. That's not the hard part. The hard part is going home at 5 o'clock and trying to not look at my phone and be 100% present for my wife and my 2-year-old daughter.
Oh, yeah.
That's the hard part. That going home and trying to do that at the end of a day when you're up at 4 and you're going through that, like the hard part's not the work. The hard part is go to try to be present. They're present on the weekends. Be present to your family. Be present to the other things that matter. Because what happens, you get in a dangerous place when it's like your startup or bust. And that's all you end up caring about, and everything else sacrifices. That's what happened to me with football. Honestly, it's like it was football or bust, and I ended up in a bad mental place. I think the work is the easy part, but trying to be able to keep a balance in your life and keep perspective and be present for those moments with your family or whatever is important to you is the real tough part.
It's really tough. I was a friend of mine, good friend of mine, was looking at getting involved in this startup, fresh startup, and I flew out and hung out. He's like, "Hey, I want you to come and meet the CEO." And this guy's just straight corporate. He's always been corporate. He's just starting his first startup. He's saved up some money, got a mortgage out on the house. And I'm kind of talking to him, and I meet his wife as well, and nice people, good people. But it became real apparent that they had no idea what's to come, and the amount of pressure that's going to put on their family and their life. It's not like it was him working at one of these really large organizations. It's very different, and it's funny. I found myself coaching the guy's wife on what this is going to look like in the next year. And like, they were like, "What do you mean? Like, no, like we have it off." No, it's not, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. Right. And, ultimately, my buddy did end up, he took on the position of CTO for this company, and it just fell apart. The whole thing fell apart, it was because of that. It really was. It's tough.
I tell people all the time, when you start a startup, it's not just you. Your spouse is starting a startup. Like, listen, we launched in 2019. I was doing a bunch of side work to pay bills because I didn't make $1 from salary in 2019, 2020. It wasn't until 2021 I started making $2,000 a month. And during that time, we sold the house, remodeled a house, went through COVID, had a daughter. Like, my wife was fully prepared, like, I'm probably going to make no money. And fortunately, we were able to handle that and kind of weather that storm. And now I get a paycheck from Better Agency, which is nice. But it is when you start a startup, it is tough. Like, your spouse is starting that startup as well, because they're going to be a part of it.
That's right. And I mean, I think advice when you're starting out is you guys have to be on the same page. That, look, at least for me, man, no matter how hard you try, you're going to bring that shit home. Yeah. I mean, I don't care who you are. You're going to bring that shit home. And dude, you're talking about, Friday at noon, you need to come up with $200,000 to make payroll for your team. You're already not getting paid. I got to find money. And I'm like, dude, this is a real story for me. I'm calling friends and family, like, can I borrow $200,000? They're like, what do you mean? How do you lot? How, right. And just pounding through that, getting it done. It's like, whew, coming home, sitting down at dinner, and you got to be there, man. And it is not easy, It's
tough. It is tough to be that. I think that's the hard part. Like, how do you figure out how to, don't lie to yourself and say you can't bring it home. Like, don't lie to yourself and say you won't. Like, because it's not realistic. I'm a verbal processor. My wife is she is not employed by Better Agency, but I've never seen a startup work. If you're married, if you have a spouse, I've never seen a startup be successful if you're not successful in your home life. If you've got turmoil going on in your home life, I've never seen somebody be able to run a successful business and have turmoil at home. Like, it takes both. I haven't seen it work.
And while it can be hard, these entrepreneurs are not going in alone. People like Jim Hackbarth are there to help coach and guide these new insurtech startups as they come into the industry. But I'll let him tell you what he thinks is the greatest part about being a coach in this industry.
When I go back to when I was a young person, going back to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and into high school and a couple of years in college, it was those people that made a substantial impact on my life. And so in terms of values, the right way to do things, there's no shortcuts, and all that stuff. And that going back to the insurtech world, that's some of the things I know that you've been exposed to and I've been exposed to, how some of these young startups want to take a shortcut. You can't do it. You can't do it. You got to serve the customers, deliver what you promise, adjust to make it better, get funding, use that funding, other people's money diligently, and then keep climbing up the ladder.
I think it's a lot of it is just you have to honor your word, right?
Yes.
And being honest with people. Yep. And I mean, you're not really selling them if you're helping them, right?
You're right. You're right.
And yeah, I think that a key to it is just being able to build relationships. Yep. But you can only build relationships with real people if you're a real person yourself. You can't fake that stuff.
Right.
You know? I mean, some can and some are good at it, but only for a period of time, you know? And especially in our industry, it's a small world, you know? It very much is. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it is. And I love sales too. You know, I actually even love the thrill of the kill. I love getting in there and just closing deals and doing that a little more transactional. But really, you have to stand behind a product that you really believe in, right? In order to be good at what you do. And I think that that's the difference. You're a guy that has, you know, huge integrity, and you're not gonna bullshit people. You're not gonna provide an inferior product by any means. And you know, you've made an amazing career out of that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate those kind words.
And we'll end with two founders who are now part of the Ivins family, Mike and Alan. They've been on the podcast before, and I think one of the best parts of their episode was really diving into what it takes to create something from a technology standpoint that will be successful in the industry.
Think about it like Lego blocks, right? That you start to stack the things together in different ways and different configurations. So much becomes possible, but that only happens if the pieces are solid and the pieces are standard and the pieces can fit together. So it's really just a matter of having those good habits and those best practices and just just doing it right. If you do something right, sky's the limit.
I mean, I think look, you said it earlier. It's like we learned so much, you know, in that first business. And then you go through, you know, we went through a few acquisition events, and you sort of know like how you get, you know, if you ever wind up in that situation again, you don't want to be running around plugging holes or trying to check the boxes to get through a code scan or a technology review. And I mean, from day one, we were writing tests. We were putting things in place. Like it was without a doubt. I mean, it was the most disciplined project endeavor. I mean, I've ever been involved in. Everything is so automated because we had to scale ourselves. And that meant, you know, anything we could automate, from testing to proactively monitoring, you know, is stuff up, is stuff down, is the memory getting too big on the box because something's happening? Like everything was very, very like proactive. In terms, that's how we scaled ourselves with that automation, which again, you know, that's a lot of these services, you know, weren't available maybe 10 years ago, but man, it's like, if you know where to look, there's some really like, you know, good stuff out there to sort of scale around you when you keep these things going.
Reading a lot of books about, you know, technology companies and whatnot, historically they advise against that, right? They say that, you know, at running and owning a software company, you shouldn't be developing and doing that, but it definitely worked out in your favor. That's for sure.
There's probably about 20 things in that book you read that we did that you shouldn't do. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, it's. I also sort of view ourselves as, you got to be lucky. Okay, I mean, you got to work hard. You got to have a good idea. You got to have revenue. You got to have customers. You have to be lucky. And any founder who, you know, when they stop realizing that and they start believing it's all them, I could think of a number of times where things had to break our way, and they did. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's, you know, and there was a couple of times where you're sort of like, you know, at a fork in a road where something has to happen. And it's like, all right, do you make a decision based on fear, or do you, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, 5 things fall into place that you didn't see coming. And that, you know, there is certainly a luck aspect to this. And we certainly had our fair share of luck. I don't dispute that at all.
So that's only a sampling of some of the startups that we've had on the show. And I know Reid and I are eager to get new interviews out to all of our listeners. And I can assure you, we will have more startups with some great advice for insurtechs that are starting out in the industry. Hope you guys stay tuned, More exciting stuff to come on the Insurance Technology Podcast.